Very few places in Britain have managed to preserve control, ownership, and influence without interruption for centuries. Chatsworth Mansion is one of those rare places. Established in 1552, Chatsworth Mansion emerged during an era when power was unstable and survival was never guaranteed. Britain was a land of uncertainty, where estates were frequently divided, sold, or lost as political authority shifted rapidly. Loyalty to the crown could elevate a family one year and destroy it the next. Wealth was fragile and influence could disappear overnight. Many powerful families vanished within a single generation. Chatsworth Mansion did not vanish. From its very beginning, Chatsworth was never intended to be a place of comfort or display alone. It was conceived with a different understanding of power, the one that valued endurance over visibility. While other estates were designed to impress courts, attract attention, or demonstrate wealth, Chatsworth was structured to remain intact, protected, and continuous. At the time of its construction, money could not be trusted. Wealth could be seized, heavily taxed, or erased through political decision. Favor was unpredictable and dangerous. Influence built on recognition alone rarely survived long. Land, however, offered stability. Land produced food, supported labor, controlled housing, and shaped daily survival. Those who controlled land controlled influence, far more reliably than those who controlled money. Chatsworth Mansion was built within this reality. From its earliest years, the estate controlled extensive agricultural lands that supported surrounding communities. Villages depended on Chatsworth for work, housing, and stability. This dependence created loyalty without force and authority without confrontation. Power became embedded in daily life rather than displayed openly. Unlike many elite families who sought constant visibility and recognition, Chatsworth avoided attention deliberately. Its builders understood that visible power invites resistance, while power that feels permanent becomes accepted. Over time, Chatsworth stopped being questioned. Its presence felt natural, stable, and inevitable. Another critical reason for its survival was structure. Chatsworth was never treated as the personal possession of one individual. Succession was planned carefully, and continuity mattered more than personality. Authority was passed forward deliberately, ensuring that the estate remained whole rather than fragmented. Individuals could fail, Chatsworth would remain. As Britain changed over the centuries, political systems evolved, economic models shifted, and new forms of wealth emerged. Many historic estates struggled to adapt or disappeared entirely. Chatsworth responded differently. It absorbed transformation quietly, adjusting where necessary while preserving its core structure. Today, Chatsworth Mansion is admired as heritage, celebrated for its architecture, gardens, and history. Millions walk its grounds believing they are witnessing the past. But beneath this appearance lies a deeper truth. Chatsworth Mansion was never built to dominate history. It was built to outlast it. Chatsworth Mansion did not survive because it was beautiful. It survived because it controlled land. In early Britain, land was the foundation of all real power. Long before modern finance, corporations, or global markets existed, land determined who ate, who worked, and who survived. Money could vanish overnight, but land endured. Titles could be removed, but land remained rooted in place. The builders of Chatsworth understood this reality deeply. From the beginning, Chatsworth was surrounded by vast agricultural estates. These lands were not symbolic or decorative. They were productive. They generated food, employment, and long-term stability. Entire communities depended on the estate for survival. This dependency created influence that did not need enforcement. When people rely on a system to live, loyalty follows naturally. Power becomes quiet, stable, and unquestioned. This was far more effective than visible authority. Unlike modern wealth, land could not be hidden or moved offshore. It tied power permanently to geography. Families who controlled land controlled generations of labor and resources. This is why British elites trusted soil more than money. Chatsworth became an economic center long before the idea of corporations existed. Farms, workers, and local trade were all connected to the estate. The mansion itself functioned as a command center, not merely a home. This structure allowed Chatsworth to remain relevant even as political systems changed. Another critical factor was inheritance discipline. British elite families avoided dividing land equally among heirs. Instead, estates were preserved intact. Power was concentrated, not scattered. This prevented gradual erosion across generations. Chatsworth followed this model carefully. The estate passed through controlled succession, ensuring continuity rather than fragmentation. Younger family members were guided into institutions like the church, the military, or governance, while the core estate remained protected. This ensured stability. While other families diluted their influence over time, Chatsworth preserved it. The estate remained whole. Authority remained centralized. The structure remained intact. This approach reduced risk dramatically. Where division weakened others, concentration strengthened Chatsworth. Over centuries, this land-based system insulated Chatsworth from economic shocks. Market crashes did not affect crops. Currency failure did not eliminate land value. Political reforms altered governance, but land ownership endured. This is why Chatsworth survived moments that destroyed others. By anchoring power in land rather than wealth alone, Chatsworth ensured permanence. It was not dependent on trends, rulers, or financial systems. It existed beyond them. This land-first philosophy became one of the most powerful survival strategies in British elite history, and it explains why Chatsworth was never just a mansion. It was a foundation. Land alone was not enough to protect Chatsworth Mansion. What ensured its survival was law. British elite. Families understood early that legal systems could be shaped into powerful defensive tools. Laws were not merely rules to follow. They were instruments to preserve influence. Those who mastered legal structure protected wealth without drawing attention. Chatsworth followed this strategy carefully. Over generations, the estate was shielded through inheritance laws, settlements, and legal arrangements designed to prevent fragmentation. Ownership was deliberately complicated. Assets were placed beyond the reach of impulsive decisions, political interference, and financial disaster. No single individual truly owned Chatsworth. The estate belonged to the structure itself. This separation ensured continuity. Trusts played a critical role in this system. They ensured that land and assets could not be sold freely or divided recklessly. Even when individuals faced debt, scandal, or failure, the core estate remained untouched. This legal insulation removed one of the greatest threats to elite survival: human weakness. While individuals could make mistakes, the system endured. Another advantage of legal complexity was obscurity. Outsiders rarely understood who controlled what. Ownership became layered, indirect, and difficult to trace. This discouraged scrutiny and interference. Power that is difficult to map is difficult to challenge. Chatsworth benefited from this invisibility. Unlike modern wealth, which is often tied to personal accounts or public markets, Chatsworth's assets were protected through legal continuity. Laws evolved, but the principles remained intact. Reform adjusted the system without dismantling it. This adaptability allowed Chatsworth to survive political change without confrontation. Legal protection also ensured stability during crisis. Wars, economic downturns, and political reforms did not penetrate the estate's core. The system absorbed shocks and preserved control. This legal resilience distinguished Chatsworth from families that relied on visible wealth or political favor. Over time, law became a silent guardian. It did not announce itself. It did not display power. It simply preserved it. This quiet protection allowed Chatsworth to remain intact while others collapsed. Today, the estate appears as heritage, art, and tradition. But behind this appearance lies a carefully engineered legal framework that has protected it for centuries. Chatsworth was not defended by armies or public authority. It was defended by structure, and that structure ensured survival. Chatsworth Mansion survived not only because of land and law, but because of silence. British elite families learned a lesson. Very early in history, visibility attracts danger. The more power is displayed, the more it is questioned. Public attention brings scrutiny, resentment, and opposition. Power that announces itself becomes a target. Chatsworth avoided this mistake. Unlike modern wealth, which often seeks recognition and admiration, Chatsworth remained deliberately distant. It did not compete for fame. It did not seek public approval. It did not try to justify its existence. Silence became protection. While other elites displayed wealth openly, Chatsworth chose restraint. Its influence moved quietly through institutions rather than headlines. Authority flowed through tradition, expectation, and long-established presence, not through loud declarations. This invisibility reduced resistance. When power does not demand attention, it rarely provokes confrontation. Titles played a crucial role in reinforcing this silent authority. British aristocratic titles carried legitimacy that did not require explanation. Dukes and lords did not need to assert dominance openly. Their status was already accepted. Chatsworth benefited enormously from this inherited respect. Power appeared traditional rather than aggressive. It was seen as continuity rather than control. This perception shielded the estate from public hostility and political challenge. Silence also prevented comparison. By avoiding extravagant display, Chatsworth avoided envy. By remaining reserved, it avoided resentment. The estate did not invite judgment or debate. This restraint allowed it to survive periods that destroyed more visible elites. Over centuries, this strategy became increasingly important. As political systems modernized and public discourse expanded, visible elites became targets of reform and criticism. Those who stood in the spotlight were challenged, regulated, or dismantled. Chatsworth remained outside this spotlight. It existed, but it did not announce itself. Even during moments of social upheaval, Chatsworth avoided becoming a symbol of oppression or resistance. It was not portrayed as an enemy of progress. Its silence preserved legitimacy. This is how power adapts without confrontation. In modern times, Chatsworth appears open and cultural. Visitors walk its halls. Cameras capture its beauty. But this visibility is carefully managed. What is shown is history and art, not structure and control. The system behind Chatsworth remains unseen. This is not transparency. It is control. Chatsworth demonstrates a powerful truth about elite survival. Real power does not argue. It does not seek validation. It does not explain itself. It simply exists, quietly shaping outcomes over time. Silence was never weakness. It was strategy. Chatsworth Mansion did not expand its influence through conquest or visibility. It expanded through systems. As Britain entered the age of empire, elite power transformed. Wealth no longer came only from land at home. It flowed through trade, administration, and global networks that stretched far beyond Britain's borders. But not all families benefited equally. Those who sought visible association with empire often became exposed to political backlash and moral scrutiny. Chatsworth avoided this exposure carefully. The estate did not present itself as a colonial power center. It did not advertise imperial involvement. Instead, wealth arrived indirectly, through institutions, investments, and administrative structures connected to empire. Distance became protection. British elites understood that empire was risky when approached openly. Wars were expensive. Colonies were unstable. Public opinion could turn quickly. Families that tied their identity directly to imperial dominance often faced decline when the empire weakened. Chatsworth followed a different strategy. Rather than relying on empire as a source of identity, it treated empire as a source of opportunity, quietly integrated, never advertised. Profits flowed without visibility. Influence expanded without attention. This approach insulated the estate from imperial collapse. Colonial wealth strengthened the foundations already in place. Land at home remained the anchor. Law remained the shield. Empire became an extension, not a dependency. When the empire expanded, Chatsworth benefited. When the empire contracted, Chatsworth endured. This separation ensured survival. Another critical advantage was administrative proximity without responsibility. British elites often occupied positions that shaped colonial policy without bearing public accountability. Decisions were made behind closed doors. Benefits flowed upward. Consequences rarely reached estates like Chatsworth. Power moved through institutions rather than individuals. This institutional distance protected the estate from blame and reform. As the British Empire declined, many families collapsed with it. Wealth streams disappeared. Influence faded. Identities built on imperial dominance lost relevance. Chatsworth did not. Because Chatsworth had never relied on empire alone. Its foundations were older, deeper, and more resilient. When modern Britain emerged from imperial decline, Chatsworth adapted once again. It did not resist change aggressively. It repositioned itself as heritage, culture, and tradition. The structure remained intact. Only the appearance changed. This transformation was not surrender. It was evolution. By shifting from power center to cultural landmark, Chatsworth preserved legitimacy while maintaining control. Influence continued quietly, now protected by public admiration rather than fear or opposition. This adaptation ensured continuity into the modern age. Chatsworth's relationship with empire reveals a critical lesson. Elite power survives by avoiding dependency. It benefits from systems without becoming defined by them. Empire was temporary. Land was permanent. Structure was eternal. This ability to extract value without exposure explains why Chatsworth survived the collapse of empire while others did not. It did not fall with history. It stepped aside and waited. As Britain entered the modern era, power no longer looked the same. Democracy expanded, aristocratic authority weakened, and public scrutiny increased. Many elite families struggled to adapt. Systems that once protected them became liabilities. Chatsworth Mansion adapted differently. Instead of resisting change, it repositioned itself. The estate gradually transformed from a private power center into a cultural symbol. Art, history, and heritage replaced authority as its public face. This shift was not a loss of power, but a rebranding of it. Control remained. Only visibility changed. Public access became a shield rather than a threat. By opening parts of the estate to visitors, Chatsworth gained legitimacy. It was no longer seen as exclusive dominance, but as shared heritage. This perception reduced criticism and protected ownership. Heritage became defense. While modern elites faced regulation and exposure, Chatsworth benefited from admiration. Cultural value replaced political vulnerability. Influence moved quietly behind preservation, tourism, and tradition. This transformation also protected the estate financially. Tourism revenue supported maintenance without forcing structural change. The land remained intact. Ownership remained stable. The system endured. Chatsworth did not abandon its foundations. It concealed them behind culture. Education played a role as well. History framed Chatsworth as a symbol of national identity rather than elite survival. Complexity was simplified. Structures were softened. What remained was beauty, not power. This framing was strategic. When power is misunderstood, it is rarely challenged. As public narratives shifted, Chatsworth remained untouchable. It no longer represented inequality or dominance. It represented tradition. That distinction mattered. In modern Britain, reform targets visible power. Chatsworth avoided visibility once again. The estate's legal and land-based foundations continued to operate beneath the surface. Trusts remained intact. Succession remained controlled. Systems continued to function quietly. The mansion evolved, but the structure did not. Chatsworth's modern survival proves an important point. Elite power does not disappear when challenged. It changes form. It adopts new language. It hides behind values society respects. Today, those values are culture, history, and preservation. Visitors admire architecture. They photograph gardens. They consume stories of art and tradition. Few consider the systems that kept the estate intact for centuries. That invisibility remains one of Chatsworth's greatest strengths. Chatsworth did not survive by clinging to the past. It survived by understanding the present and by preparing quietly for the future. Chatsworth Mansion did not rely on wealth alone to preserve influence. It relied on institutions. British elite power has always understood that true continuity does not come from money or land by itself, but from access to the systems that shape society. Education, governance, culture, and law became quiet extensions of elite survival. Chatsworth was deeply connected to these institutions. For generations, elite families ensured that their heirs were placed within Britain's most influential structures. Prestigious schools, universities, and networks were not simply places of learning. They were gateways to long-term authority. Education created continuity. By controlling who entered positions of influence, elite families shaped outcomes without appearing to do so. Power moved through relationships, shared values, and mutual recognition rather than direct command. Chatsworth benefited from this system fully. Institutions also provided legitimacy. Influence exercised through recognized bodies appeared neutral rather than personal. Decisions felt procedural rather than strategic. Authority seemed earned rather than inherited. This masked elite continuity. Another advantage of institutional presence was invisibility. Power did not need to originate from the estate itself. It flowed outward through graduates, administrators, advisors, and decision-makers who shared the same background. The estate remained distant. Influence remained active. This separation protected Chatsworth from scrutiny. British elites also understood the importance of patience within institutions. Change was slow, deliberate, and controlled. Radical shifts were avoided. Continuity mattered more than speed. This mindset mirrored Chatsworth's land-based philosophy. As Britain modernized, institutions became even more powerful. While public authority appeared democratic, real influence often remained concentrated within established systems. Those who understood these systems navigated them quietly. Chatsworth was never excluded. The estate did not need to announce its presence. It was embedded, whether through cultural boards, educational influence, or advisory roles. The legacy of elite power continued without drawing attention to its source. This is how survival extended beyond land and law. Today, many assume elite power disappeared with aristocracy's decline. In reality, it relocated. It moved into structures that appear neutral and permanent. Chatsworth did not lose relevance. It changed channels. This strategy ensured that even as public attitudes shifted, elite influence remained intact. By operating within institutions rather than against them, Chatsworth avoided confrontation and preserved continuity. Power remained effective precisely because it was invisible. Chatsworth teaches another crucial lesson. The most resilient power systems do not dominate openly. They shape environments, values, and pathways quietly. They do not need to control outcomes directly. They shape the conditions under which outcomes occur. By embedding itself within institutions rather than standing above them, Chatsworth extended its survival far beyond architecture or land. It ensured influence without exposure, and that influence continues. Chatsworth Mansion still stands, not because history spared it, but because it was engineered to endure history. Across 5 centuries, Britain transformed completely. Monarchs rose and fell. Empires expanded and collapsed. Political systems evolved. Social values shifted. Yet through every transformation, Chatsworth remained intact. This survival was not luck. It was design. Chatsworth was never dependent on a single source of power. Land anchored it. Law protected it. Silence shielded it. Institutions extended its influence. When one system weakened, another carried the weight. This layered structure ensured resilience. Power was never exposed in one place. Control was never concentrated in one moment. This made collapse impossible. While many fortunes chased visibility and recognition, Chatsworth avoided both. It understood that attention invites resistance. Noise attracts scrutiny. Silence preserves legitimacy. By remaining quiet, it avoided becoming a symbol of inequality or opposition. By appearing traditional rather than aggressive, it remained culturally acceptable. This acceptance proved invaluable. As modern Britain emerged, Chatsworth did not resist change. It adapted. It reframed itself as heritage, culture, and history. This transformation preserved ownership while gaining public admiration. What looked like openness was strategy. What appeared as surrender was control. The structure remained untouched. Today, visitors walk through the estate believing they are witnessing history. In reality, they are witnessing continuity. The systems that protected Chatsworth remain in place, quietly functioning beneath the surface. The mansion is not frozen in time. It is operating in it. Chatsworth teaches a lesson rarely discussed openly. Real power does not announce itself. It does not demand recognition. It builds systems that survive change. New wealth rises quickly. Old power lasts patiently. The story of Chatsworth is not about privilege alone. It is about strategy. It is about understanding risk, controlling exposure, and planning across generations rather than lifetimes. This mindset separated survival from collapse. When we look at Chatsworth today, we are not looking at a relic. We are looking at a blueprint, a model of how elite power learned to endure without domination. It did not fight history. It outlasted it. Chatsworth Mansion remains where it has always been, not at the center of attention, but at the center of continuity, and that is why it still stands. Chatsworth Mansion does not stand alone. It represents a broader pattern, a way of thinking that shaped British elite survival far beyond a single estate. What makes Chatsworth remarkable is not only its longevity, but the clarity with which it reveals how power adapts when it cannot dominate openly. This story is not unique. Chatsworth is simply one of the clearest examples. Across Britain, similar estates followed comparable principles. Land over liquidity, structure over spectacle, continuity over ambition. Some survived, many did not. The difference was never wealth alone. It was discipline. Elite survival required restraint. It demanded patience. It required the ability to think in centuries rather than years. Families that failed to adopt this mindset collapsed under their own visibility or internal division. Chatsworth avoided both. What this story reveals is uncomfortable. Power rarely disappears. It changes form. When challenged directly, it withdraws. When threatened publicly, it hides behind accepted values. When criticized, it reframes itself. Chatsworth mastered this transformation. Modern society often assumes that progress eliminates old power. In reality, progress simply forces power to become quieter. It moves into systems that appear neutral. Education, culture preservation, institutions. What cannot be attacked openly cannot be dismantled. This is why estates like Chatsworth still matter. They show how influence survives reform without confrontation. They demonstrate how ownership can remain unchanged while appearance evolves. The mansion you see today is not the mansion that mattered most. The system behind it is. This raises a deeper question. If power can adapt so seamlessly, how much of it truly disappears? And how much of it simply waits? Chatsworth invites us to rethink what influence really looks like. It reminds us that control does not require force, noise, or dominance. It requires patience, insulation, and structure. In a world obsessed with visibility, the most enduring power often remains unseen. This is not a condemnation. It is an observation. Understanding power does not mean admiring it. It means recognizing how it operates. Chatsworth Mansion stands today not as a monument to the past, but as evidence of a strategy that still works. Its survival tells us less about history and more about the present, because the methods that protected it have not vanished. They have simply become harder to notice. And that is perhaps the most important lesson of all. Chatsworth Mansion is not the exception. It is the blueprint. Once you understand how Chatsworth survived, a larger pattern begins to appear across Britain. Similar estates, similar families, and similar strategies quietly shaped the country's elite structure for centuries. The names changed. The buildings differed. But the system remained the same. British elite power was never built around a single mansion or family. It was built as a network, estates connected through marriage, law, education, and shared understanding. Each mansion was a node, not an island. Chatsworth simply reveals the system clearly. These estates were never meant to operate independently. Land ownership connected them. Legal structures protected them. Institutions reinforced them. Silence shielded them. Together, they formed an ecosystem of continuity. When one estate weakened, others remained stable. When one family declined, the system endured. Power did not collapse because it was never centralized in one place. This decentralization was deliberate. What appears today as isolated, heritage sites were once components of a much larger framework. a framework designed to survive political reform, economic collapse, and social change without losing control. Modern Britain often celebrates equality and transparency, yet beneath these values, older structures quietly persist. Influence flows through networks rather than titles. Control operates through systems rather than commands. The form changed. The function did not. This is why studying one mansion matters. Chatsworth is not just a story of survival. It is an instruction manual. It shows how elite power learned to retreat without surrendering, how it learned to adapt without losing position, how it learned to exist without demanding recognition. As we move forward in this series, other estates will reveal the same principles expressed differently. Each mansion will tell its own story, but the underlying logic will remain familiar. Land, law, silence, institutions, time. These are the pillars that shaped British elite survival. Understanding this does not require admiration. It requires clarity. Power does not disappear simply because society changes. It reshapes itself to fit new environments. Chatsworth was one lesson. It is not the last. In the episodes ahead, we will explore other mansions that followed this blueprint. Some thrived. Some failed. The difference will always return to the same question. Did they build for attention, or did they build to last? This series is not about nostalgia. It is about recognizing patterns that still operate today, because once you see the system, you cannot unsee it. And once you understand how power survives, history begins to look very different.